The duly elected leader of the Labour Party is Andy Burnham.
I will be a leader for the North, the South, the East and the West.
That is a speech that Andy Burnham has been dreaming of delivering for at least 16 years. Well, he got his coronation.
He's a good guy. I'm behind him.
Andy Burnham, for me, isn't the man for the job.
I see that he was, I guess, the mayor of a town. I hear he's extremely liberal. Extremely.
He's not bad looking. Bit of eye candy.
So, with Andy Burnham now confirmed as Labour leader, heading for number 10, what will President Trump and other world leaders make of him? Well, over the next 10 minutes, we'll assess that with our correspondents. But first, here's Henry Zeffman on who is Andy Burnham and what he stands for.
Who is he and what does he stand for? He is a man who has been around British politics for a very long time. The first time he tried to become leader of the Labour Party was 16 years ago. He stood in the 2010 Labour leadership election. He then tried again in 2015, came second, and then a couple of years after that, he did something pretty unusual. He stood down as an MP and went to be the newly created mayor of Grater Manchester. And there, he's carved out a pretty distinctive set of political principles. He calls them Manchesterism, and he sees it as an alliance of business and the public sector to fuel growth. He talks about needing greater public control of utilities, for example, so water companies and others. He talks about needing greater infrastructure, particularly in the north of England, to rebalance the British and English, in particular, economy. But what does Andy Burnham think about welfare, about defence, about foreign policy, about immigration policy, about so many of the issues which cross a Prime Minister's desk day to day? Well, on that, I think we have to say we don't really know. Those are the kinds of issues where Andy Burnham is going to have to set out his principles and hope that Labour MPs agree.
Andy Burnham is taking office at a tumultuous and uncertain time globally, from the war in the Gulf to Ukraine to managing relations with the United States and China. We'll have a lot of foreign policy plates to juggle in the coming minutes. A key relationship, though, is with President Trump. He was asked about Andy Burnham at the White House just last month. Have a listen.
What do you know about him, Mr. President, and what does he need to do to improve the relationship between
Yeah, know about who?
the new incoming Prime Minister, Andy Burnham?
I don't know anything. I see that he was, I guess, the mayor of a town. I hear he's extremely liberal. Extremely. So that means he probably won't open up the North Sea.
Well, until recently, Nomia Iqbal was our correspondent in Washington. Here's her take on the relationship, but what it might be like between Trump and Burnham.
The truth is, I think it will be hard to fully judge just what the relationship will be like between both men. And I think a lot of that is down to the fact that Andy Burnham hasn't really defined yet what his foreign policy is. I also think something that will be very important, arguably more important, will be the personal relationship between both men. Donald Trump really likes personal chemistry. And yes, he has made these dismissive comments about Andy Burnham before meeting him. But I remember a similar approach he had with the mayor of another big city, Zoran Mamdani of New York. Before they met, Mr. Trump was incredibly critical of Mr. Mamdani, even calling him, I quote, a communist lunatic. And yet, when both men met, it was in the White House last November. I was there covering the event for the BBC. Mr. Trump was so full of praise for Mr. Mamdani. The whole meeting turned out very pleasant. Mr. Trump himself said that both men agreed on many more things than he had realised. And so I think Donald Trump's pre-meeting rhetoric doesn't really give you a sense of how a relationship will pan out. The other important thing here is that when it comes to the UK, I think a lot of Donald Trump's interest in the country isn't through a Prime Minister, but through the monarchy. He has a real affection for the royal family, for pageantry. I think that will have more of an emotional pull for him.
Well, a little closer to home, Andy Burnham will have to build relationships with Europe's leaders. Jess Parker is in Berlin for us.
I was speaking to a European diplomat yesterday who basically said to me, call us when Andy Burnham is actually Prime Minister. Obviously, the UK has rotated through a number of Prime Ministers since the Brexit referendum. And I would say largely in countries like Germany, for example, which has a lot of its own domestic politics going on, there's not necessarily a huge lens on the change in Prime Minister in terms of what Europe will want? Well, I think, for example, in Germany, in France, where you've seen a lot of cooperation, particularly through the E3 format of those three countries when it comes to supporting Ukraine, they will want to see a Britain that does continue in that kind of foreign policy trend of strong support for Ukraine.
Well, Paul Adams is our diplomatic correspondent in Kyiv. He has more on what Ukrainians hope for from Andy Burnham.
There's not a lot to go on when it comes to Andy Burnham and many foreign policy issues, especially, of course, here, the war in Ukraine. He has written that support for the Ukraine will not waver. He's also spoken of having stood resolutely with Ukraine's mayors, and he has something of a track record there, being one of the founder members of a network supporting Ukrainian cities throughout the war. When Sir Keir Starmer himself was here only yesterday, he said that he felt that nothing would change. He felt that support would continue. He said he could feel it in his bones. But I think it is fair to say that Ukrainians are anxious.
Let's turn to China, because Andy Burnham once pointed to China's high-speed rail network as a model for the north of England. So how will he be received in Beijing as Prime Minister? Stephen McDonnell has the latest from there.
Beijing keeps its cards pretty close to its chest when new world leaders come in, and with Andy Burnham it's no different. So you have to look to the messaging from those around those in power to see what the thinking is. And really for Beijing, the big change came when Labor took power in Britain, and that a new Labor government started to build bridges again. And when you look at the Communist Party-controlled media here, there's no indication that they expect anything different from another Labor leader. But it is interesting, there's an article, for example, from an academic who works for an institute underneath the Foreign Ministry, and in that, Liu Jin writes that a Burnham leadership, pragmatic economic cooperation alongside continued strategic vigilance. So it's pretty much steady as she goes, but you can imagine Chinese government figures might hope that at least this time they can start to build a stronger relationship with a leader without having to constantly turn it over again every few years.
So that's the view from around the world. Here, he's the so-called King of the North. So how is he likely to go down in the south? Simon Jones is in Faversham in Kent.
The market here in Faversham dates back 1,000 years. It's the oldest one in Kent, but today a lot of talk about the new leader of the Labour Party and the man who will be the new Prime Minister. Now, Andy Burnham is known as King of the North, but he said today he wanted to be a leader for the North, South, East and West. But what do people here think of the changes?
Hopefully he's going to do something with the country. It needs to be done. Mainly close the borders straight away.
Well, I think a bit more representation in the government, a bit more focus on, because there was like the whole social media thing and that, and it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like old people, isn't it, running around, old farts.
If he does what it says on his tin, that would be really good, because he does seem to have some good ideas, some good policies, but, you know, they've got to deliver, haven't they?
I've had a little read up about him this morning, because I've got to be honest, till I heard you were coming, I didn't even know who he was. I'm assuming that someone will be taking over from Keir Starmer, but I didn't really know who. So he's not bad looking. Bit of eye candy.
Well, they're all the same, aren't they? I can't see him doing any better than the other one.
So a lot in Andy Burnham's in-tray. Now, some of the stall holders here have told me there needs to be more help for small businesses. Some say immigration needs to be looked at more thoroughly. And some people say already too many houses are being built in this part of the country and the infrastructure simply can't cope. A lot for the next Prime Minister to think about.
So let's leave the last word on Andy Burnham to the voters he represents as an MP, the people of Makerfield. Our North West political editor Annabelle Tiffin has this.
He's got a tough job on his hands. Country's in a mess and it needs politicians to step up now.
So what do people in his new constituency of Makerfield make of their new MP becoming the new Prime Minister? Well, some of them are baffled. They're wondering how he's got into number 10 without a proper process, without an election.
The Prime Minister bit, I don't think that's right. How can you just jump into a job like that?
Others are thinking, well, will he have time for us? There is a problem with flooding in that area. And they're wondering, even though he promised in his lead up to the election to help, is he now going to have time to sort that kind of thing out?
It is going to happen. I've got confidence in him.
To be fair, he is still extremely popular with a lot of people that we spoke to. They like his personality, they like the way that he can communicate, and they really like the pledge that he's made to spread wealth to every postcode, particularly in the North West.
And that's all you need to know about Andy Burnham.